Every enemy ship we destroyed brought us one step closer to Japan. I reminded my pilots of this before each mission, and it truly reflected our purpose. In the summer of 1944, from the deck of the USS Lexington, I witnessed the most powerful naval force ever created heading straight toward Japan. With 58 carriers, 7 battleships, 21 cruisers, and 69 destroyers. Task Force 58 was the core of America's sea power. We were about to launch a massive assault on Japan's navy, and I had a front-row view of their empire beginning to fall apart. I am Rear Admiral Mark Mitcher, and this is the account of how we broke the strength of Japan's navy in the Central Pacific. It's the story of how American air forces changed the course of the war, and how in just 6 months, more than 50 Japanese warships were sunk. This is how we carried the war straight to Japan, one ship at a time. On June 6, 1944, as Allied soldiers landed in Normandy, we were getting ready for our own invasion in the Pacific. The Japanese had controlled the Central Pacific for almost 3 years, but that was about to end. Admiral Chester Nimitz had given us clear orders: defeat Japan's main fleet and clear the way to Tokyo. Early that morning, as the sun rose, Commander Jimmy Flatley handed me the latest intelligence from Pearl Harbor. Flatley, a calm and capable former fighter pilot who had earned his place at Guadalcanal, was now my operations officer. He was the perfect person to help manage air attacks from nearly 900 planes. I went through the reports. The Japanese had gathered a powerful naval group of their own, called the Mobile Fleet, under Admiral Hisaburo Ozawa. It included 9 carriers, 5 battleships, 13 cruisers, and 28 destroyers. They were stationed in the Philippine Sea, waiting for a major battle they had planned ever since Pearl Harbor. "What's your opinion, Jimmy?" I asked, as the crew prepared our Hellcat fighters for patrol. "They'll give it everything they've got," he replied. "But our training is better, our planes are stronger, and we outnumber them." He was absolutely right. The Japanese had 473 aircraft, while we had 956. But sheer numbers didn't guarantee victory in a carrier battle. It would come down to experience, technology, and well-practiced strategy, things we had worked hard on since Pearl Harbor. From the bridge, I could see the other carriers of Task Group 58.1 spread across the sea: USS Hornet, USS Yorktown, OSS Below Wood, and USS Botanij, one filled with top naval pilots. Behind us, other groups from Task Force 58 formed a powerful barrier 15 miles wide, moving toward the Marianas. Suddenly, a report came through. "Radar contact, direction 270, distance 180 miles. The voice belonged to Lieutenant Commander John Radar Henderson, our radar specialist. He could read radar like it was second nature. Large group, more than 60 planes. This was it. The battle we had trained for was about to start. All crewed to battle stations. The alarm rang out across the ship. Within moments, the Lexington turned from a calm warship into a focused combat vessel. By 10 a.m. on June 19, 1944, the Japanese launched the first wave of their attack, just as we had predicted, but they were flying straight into a defense system we had spent years perfecting. "Enemy sighted, altitude 20,000 feet. Direction 280, came the call from Lieutenant Commander David McCampbell, my top squadron leader and a calm, skilled pilot from Alabama with 7 kills already. I stood in the combat center watching 69 Japanese planes close in on us. They had no idea they were flying into one of the most advanced air defense systems ever seen. Layers of fighters directed by radar and backed up by powerful anti-aircraft guns. "Send Red Leader to intercept," Henderson said calmly. "Enemies, now, 50 miles out, coming fast." The lead group of Japanese aircraft was led by Lieutenant Commander Zenji Abe in a Zero fighter, but he didn't know that our new F-6F Hellcat had been designed specifically to beat his type of plane, better armed and tougher. "We've made contact. Engaging now," McCampbell reported. From the bridge, I watched tiny dots in the sky clash, with smoke bursts showing where planes were going down. "One enemy down," reported McCampbell's wingman. "Another heading for Lexington." "I've got him," said Lieutenant Commander Paul Buell. "Missile away. Batch to down." Out of the 69 Japanese planes, 42 were shot down in just half an hour. Only 18 made it close enough to try to attack us, and most of those were destroyed by our ship's guns. I asked Captain Ernest Snowden for a damage report. "Minor hits on South Dakota and Indiana," he replied. "Nothing serious." The Japanese lost many aircraft and some of their best pilots. We lost 23 planes, but we rescued most of the pilots. It was a major win for us, but it was only the start. At 11 a.m., the second wave came: 130 Japanese planes, mostly bombers and torpedo aircraft. They were brave, no doubt, but bravery wasn't enough. "All squadrons, this is Red Leader," I said over the radio. "Enemy approaching from the northwest. Hold position until my signal." I was flying an F-6F Hellcat at 25,000 feet, right between the enemy and our fleet. Below, I saw the task force turning to face the wind. ready to launch more fighters. Enemy now, 40 miles out. You've got 16 fighters ready, came the report from radar. Copy that. Red flight, follow me. I pushed the stick forward and dove at the enemy. The Hellcat sped past 400 miles per hour. I could see the enemy planes, bombers, and their fighter escorts, target in sight. Engaging lead bomber, I said. I got behind a Kate torpedo bomber. Its gunner fired at me, but my plane could handle the hits. I waited until I was close, then opened fire. My 6 machine guns ripped into the bomber. It broke apart mid-air. One down. I reported. Going for another. All around me, dogfights were breaking out. Our planes cut through the enemy like they were nothing. The Japanese pilots were skilled, but they couldn't match our planes or teamwork. Red 3. Someone's behind you, I warned. I see him, came the calm reply from Lieutenant Vrau. He turned sharply. Too tight for a 0 to follow. The enemy fighter stalled and spun. Vrau leveled out and fired a burst, shooting it down. That's 2 for me, he said. In just 15 minutes, we had destroyed 97 of the 130 enemy planes. The few that survived barely made it back, many trailing smoke. We lost 6 planes, but rescued 4 pilots. From inside the Lexington, I watched it all unfold on radar. Each dot showed an aircraft, and I could follow the battle as those blips changed positions. Third wave incoming, I said to Admiral Mitcher. Direction 310, distance 120 miles. Around 47 planes. The Japanese weren't giving up. Even after losing nearly 140 planes, radar gave us a new advantage, letting us coordinate better than any navy in history. Send Blue Squadron to intercept. Enemies at 80 miles, 15,000 feet. I watched as our fighters moved toward the Japanese. The radar signals joined, scattered, and then many disappeared. Shot down over the open sea, far from land. Admiral, we've got a 4th wave, I reported. Smaller, about 20 planes. Flying low to avoid radar. Send in the destroyers, Mitcher ordered. If they're flying low, they'll hit our outer defense first. I linked with the destroyers positioned 50 miles ahead. Their radar picked up the incoming planes, and their guns opened fire, flying just 100 feet above the sea. The Japanese ran into a deadly wall of explosions. Enemy down, came the reports from USS Yarn and USS Stop. Several enemy planes were shot down, and the rest turned back. By 2 p.m., the fight had ended. The Japanese had sent out 373 aircraft against our fleet, and we had taken down 315 of them, about 85% of their total force. Our pilots began calling it the Great Marianas Turkey Shoot, and the nickname stayed, but we weren't finished. Now it was our turn to go on the offensive. At 4 p.m., I made a decision that would change the course of the war in the Pacific. Our scouts had spotted the Japanese fleet 275 miles to the west. It was getting late normally. We wouldn't launch an attack this late in the day. But this wasn't a typical situation. Jimmy, where exactly is the enemy fleet now? I asked Commander flatly. Heading northwest, about 275 miles away, he said. Looks like they're trying to move out of our range. I considered our options. To return safely before dark, we would have needed to launch at 2:30 p.m. Now it was 4 p.m., and the sun would be gone by 6:45. Launching now meant our pilots would have to land at night, something most had never done under real combat conditions. But this was our opportunity to stop the enemy for good. If they escaped, we'd have to fight them again. I gave the go-ahead. Every plane we had was sent into action. Within minutes, the decks of 15 carriers were busy with activity. We launched 216 planes, 77 dive bombers, 54 torpedo bombers, and 85 fighters into the evening sky. It was the largest carrier-based airstrike ever attempted. From the bridge, I watched our squadrons form up and fly west. Many of those pilots wouldn't come back, but they were heading out to strike a blow that would cripple the Japanese Navy. I was part of the lead group, flying on SB-2C Helldiver with a 1,000-pound bomb and fuel for about 5 hours. Behind me were 216 skilled pilots ready to face one of the strongest enemy fleets we'd ever seen. Enemy fleet spotted 20 miles ahead at 280 degrees. Came the call from Lieutenant Commander William Bill Martin, who was leading the fighter escort. Through the haze, the Japanese fleet came into view, spread across the ocean. There were 9 carriers, 5 battleships, 13 cruisers, and 28 destroyers, the largest enemy formation I had ever seen. All aircraft, this is strike leader, I said over the radio. Target the carriers first, then go for the battleships and cruisers. Let's hit them hard. I chose the carrier, Zuikaku, which had been part of earlier battles at Pearl Harbor, and the Coral Sea. It was moving fast, its deck full of planes trying to get airborne, but they were too late. I'm diving now, I said, pushing the stick forward. My plane dropped from 15,000 feet, speeding past 250 miles per hour. Enemy ships filled the sky with black smoke and tracer fire, but I focused on the flight deck of Zuikaku getting larger in my sights. At 2,000 feet, I dropped my bomb and pulled up hard. The force pushed me deep into my seat as the plane climbed back up. The bomb hit right in the middle of the deck, exploded inside, and set the ship on fire. Direct hit on Zuikaku, I reported. All around, our planes were attacking. 3 carriers were being hit at the same time, while torpedo bombers went after the larger warships. It was chaotic, but well coordinated. Shikaku hit, came the report from Lieutenant Commander James Bud Ramage, leading the torpedo group. 2 torpedoes in the engine room. She's dead in the water. Looking down, I saw a powerful scene: 4 enemy carriers burning, smoke pouring into the air. The battleship Haruna was leaning to one side, and the cruiser Maya was exploding. In a chain of blasts, we had caught them off guard. Many of their fighters hadn't even taken off, and their guns couldn't handle so many attackers. In just half an hour, we struck a blow that the Japanese Navy would never fully recover from. The attack was a major success, but now, a new danger was ahead. The sun was going down, and we were still 200 miles from our ships. Most of us had never landed on a carrier at night, and we were running low on fuel. All units, this is Red. Leader, I radioed. Form up, we're heading back. The return trip was tense, fuel levels dropping, night setting in, and miles of ocean between us and safety. Some pilots reported they had reached bingo fuel, meaning they had just enough gas to make it back. Then a voice came through. Strike leader, this is Lexington. We have you on radar. Lights on. Admiral Mitcher had ordered something daring. Looking ahead, I saw the entire fleet, 58 ships across 15 miles, lit up brightly. Every ship had turned on its lights to guide us home. Normally, this would have broken all the rules for wartime safety, but he did it to bring us back alive. Never seen anything like it. My wingman, Lieutenant Vrau, said. Most beautiful sight of my life. I answered. Still, the danger wasn't over. Landing on a carrier was already hard in daylight. Now we had to do it in the dark, low on fuel, and on a deck that moved with the waves. Red leader, you're third to land, said the landing signal officer. Watch your height. The deck is rising and falling with the swell. The first plane caught the arresting wire and landed safely. The second missed and hit the barrier, but the pilot wasn't hurt. Then it was my turn. I aligned my plane with the landing lights. The sea was rough, making the deck move up and down like a ride. More power, the officer signaled. I adjusted, trying to keep steady. Cut. I dropped the throttle. The Hellcat slammed onto the deck, and I felt the tailhook catch the wire. I was safe. But the night wasn't over. Planes kept landing until 10 p.m. Out of 216 aircraft, we recovered 168. The rest were lost due to fuel shortages or accidents. But the mission had changed the war. We had removed Japan's ability to launch any major attacks at sea. Final report from the strike, Commander Flatley said as we stood watching the last planes return. 3 carriers sunk, 2 more heavily damaged. 1 battleship down, 3 cruisers destroyed, several destroyers damaged or gone. I nodded. The Japanese fleet had been broken. Of the 473 planes they had at the start, fewer than 35 were still usable. Their top pilots were gone, their ships either sinking or beyond repair, and they could no longer threaten the Pacific. But it hadn't come without sacrifice. We lost 76 aircraft and 71 crew members. Brave men, skilled aviators who gave everything to bring us closer to ending the war. I thought about the letters I'd have to write to their families, explaining why their loss had mattered. A message came in from Admiral Spruance, our communications officer, informed me. He wanted to know whether we should follow the retreating Japanese fleet. I thought it over. The enemy was pulling back toward their homeland, their ships damaged and their forces shaken. We could chase them and try to finish them off, but our crews were worn out, our planes needed repairs, and we had other goals to achieve. Send a reply to Admiral Spruance, I said. Mission complete. The Japanese fleet is no longer a threat. Over the next half year, we kept pushing forward through the Central Pacific. At Lady Guelph, we would go on to sink another 26 enemy vessels. At Okinawa, we would crush the last of their air power. By the time we arrived at Tokyo Bay, Japan's navy was just a shadow of what it used to be. But everything began on June 19, 1944. In the Philippine Sea today, the Japanese navy was broken. 3 months later, I was back in the air, flying my Helldiver and heading toward the Philippines. The Japanese had brought together another naval group, not as big as before, but still dangerous. Admiral Halsey had taken command of the fleet and was determined to finish what we'd begun. Enemy ships spotted at 030 degrees, 15 miles out. Came the call from our scouts as we approached Lady Guelph. Below us, the enemy fleet was spread out over the quiet sea. 4 carriers, 2 battleships, 3 cruisers, and 8 destroyers. It was a smaller force than what they had 6 months earlier, but it could still do damage. All aircraft, this is the strike leader. I called out. Focus on the carriers. Let's put an end to this. This battle was different from our earlier one. The enemy had improved their defenses and their gunners were more accurate. But we had learned too, and our attack methods were stronger. I chose Zuikaku as my target, the same carrier I had damaged in our previous fight. This time, I was determined to sink her. Starting my dive, I announced, and pushed the control stick forward. My plane dropped from 12,000 feet, diving through enemy gunfire. Zuikaku was making a sharp turn, trying to avoid the incoming bombs, but it was no use. At 1,500 feet, I released my bomb and pulled up hard. The 1,000-pound bomb hit the center of Zuikaku, passed through multiple decks, and exploded in the engine room. The ship jolted, rolled over, and started to sink. Direct hit. She's going under, I reported. Within an hour, the rest of the Japanese fleet was in ruins. All 4 carriers, both battleships, and 2 cruisers were sunk. Japan's navy, once feared across the Pacific, had finally lost its ability to fight back. By February 1945, we had cleared the Central Pacific. From the Marshalls to the Philippines, we had taken apart the Japanese navy bit by bit. The final results were overwhelming. 52 enemy warships destroyed, including 9 carriers, 3 battleships, 8 cruisers, and 32 destroyers. Over 3,000 aircraft shot down. Huge amounts of merchant ships sunk. Japan's ability to go on the offensive by sea was gone for good. But this victory came at a price. We lost 248 planes and 312 aircrew. Their sacrifice had opened the road to Japan. As we neared the Japanese mainland, standing on the bridge of the USS Lexington, I thought about all we had achieved. 3 years earlier, the Japanese Navy had been the most dominant force in the Pacific. Now, it was hiding in its own harbors, unable to stop us. Another signal came through, this one from Admiral Nimitz. He wanted to know our location in preparation for the final push against Japan. I looked at the maps spread out before me. We were just 300 miles from Tokyo Bay, with 1,200 aircraft ready on our carriers. Ahead of us lay the Japanese homeland, guarded only by what little remained of their military. Send word to Admiral Nimitz, I said. Task Force 58 is prepared for final operations, but those operations would never be carried out. On August 6, 1945, a single American B-29 dropped an atomic bomb on Hiroshima. 3 days later, Nagasaki was hit by a second. On August 15th, the Japanese Emperor announced their surrender. The war was finished. We had won. My final combat mission was flown that same day, August 15, 1945. It was a patrol over Tokyo Bay, watching for any signs of enemy resistance. But the sky was empty. Japan's ONMCI Air Force, once filled with thousands of planes, was completely gone. From my cockpit, I could see the Japanese coastline below. 3 years of war had brought us from the attack on Pearl Harbor to the doorstep of Tokyo. The cost had been massive, hundreds of thousands of Americans wounded or killed, entire cities reduced to rubble, millions of civilians caught in the destruction. But in the end, victory was ours. The Japanese Empire, which had stretched across the Pacific from the Aleutians to northern Australia, had collapsed. Their fleet lay beneath the sea, their aircraft wiped out, and their army scattered across isolated islands. Red Leader, this is Lexington, came Admiral Mitcher's voice over the radio. Return to base. The war is over. I looked down at Tokyo Bay one last time, then turned my aircraft back toward our ship. The largest naval war in history was drawing to a close, and we had helped shape its outcome. On September 2, 1945, I stood aboard the USS Missouri and watched General MacArthur accept Japan's official surrender. All around us were warships from dozens of countries and unmatched display of naval power filling Tokyo Bay. The war had ended, but the knowledge we gained would shape the future of naval combat. Carrier-based aviation had proven critical. Radar had transformed our ability to detect and defend. America's factories had outproduced our enemies on every front. Most importantly, we had shown that free people, fighting for their homes and beliefs, could defeat even the strongest opponents. The Japanese fought with incredible determination, but that wasn't enough. We had the edge in training, equipment, and leadership. The Pacific conflict cost Japan 334 warships, including 21 carriers, 12 battleships, 41 cruisers, and 128 destroyers. More than 15,000 of their planes were destroyed. Around 1.74 million of their soldiers were killed or captured. Their gamble to dominate the Pacific had led to total defeat. Looking back, I understood clearly that each enemy ship we sank truly brought us closer to Japan's capital. From our early battles in the Coral Sea to the decisive strikes at Leyte Gulf and Okinawa, we had moved across 6,000 miles of ocean, defeating everything in our path. They had started the war with a surprise attack on Pearl Harbor. We ended it with the collapse of their empire. That was the cost of challenging the United States. Total loss, total surrender, total defeat. The pilots who flew with me, Winston, Henderson, and so many more earned their place in history. They proved that American freedom could produce warriors just as skilled and brave as any in the world. They showed that people who fight to protect their values cannot be stopped. Every enemy ship we brought down took us 1 mile closer to Tokyo, and in the end, we didn't stop until we arrived. This was in memory of the 312 naval aviators who died in the Central Pacific Campaign, and in honor of the many more who fought. Alongside them, their bravery made victory possible and gave freedom back to the Pacific. Looking back on everything we faced and accomplished, it's clear that this journey was more than just a series of battles. It was a test of strength, courage, and determination. Every mile we crossed, every ship we sank, and every mission we flew brought us closer to peace. The cost was high, but the outcome shaped the future. What began as a desperate fight for survival ended with a hard-earned victory that proved the power of unity, sacrifice, and the will to defend